The Garmin Fenix 9 is finally official, and after weeks of leaks, retailer listings, and speculation, we can finally separate what was real from what wasn't. And I think the biggest surprise is that Garmin hasn't tried to completely reinvent the Fenix. Instead, it has taken what was already one of the most capable outdoor watches on the market and focused on the areas that Fenix users actually care about. Better displays, faster maps, more storage, ridiculous battery life, and most importantly, much broader satellite connectivity. But if you already own a Fenix 8, there's a much harder question to answer: has Garmin actually changed enough to justify spending another $1,000? So let's start with the lineup, because Garmin is once again giving buyers a lot of choices. We have the regular Fenix 9, and then the more premium Fenix 9 Pro with the familiar 43, 47, and 51mm case sizes. The standard Fenix 9 starts at $999, while the Fenix 9 Pro starts at $199 on, so yes, this remains an extremely expensive smartwatch, especially once you move into the higher-end configurations. Visually, however, don't expect some dramatic redesign. Put a Fenix 8 and Fenix 9 next to each other, and most people probably won't immediately know which is the newer watch. Garmin has retained that familiar rugged Fenix identity with the circular body, physical buttons, and outdoor-focused construction. And I actually think that was the right decision. Fenix isn't a fashion smartwatch where Garmin needs to completely redesign it every 2 years just to make the new version recognizable. People buy these watches because they're durable, practical, and familiar. The interesting changes are happening in the details, and one of those details is the construction of the Pro. Garmin says the Fenix 9 Pro uses a titanium watch case with a new nano-molding construction that combines metal and polymer while allowing Garmin to reduce thickness and maintain durability. So this time, moving from Fenix 9 to Fenix 9 Pro isn't simply about getting a different finish or unlocking a couple of software features. Garmin is making the Pro feel like the more premium piece of hardware, but probably the first upgrade you'll actually notice every day is the display. The Fenix 9 Pro AMOLED models can now reach up to 3000 nits of brightness. That's particularly important on a watch designed to spend so much time outside. A beautiful display doesn't mean much if you're struggling to read it in direct sunlight, but the 51mm model gets the more interesting change. Garmin has finally increased the display to 1.5 inches on the largest version. That's around 15% larger than the previous display, while keeping the case itself at 51mm. And this fixes something that always felt a little strange about the older lineup. Previously, choosing the giant 51mm Fenix gave you the larger body and larger battery, but the screen itself wasn't taking full advantage of that additional space. Now it does. And on a normal smartwatch, that might just mean larger notifications. On a Fenix, the benefit is much more practical. Maps become easier to read, more information can fit onto navigation screens, data fields become clearer when you're running or cycling, and if you're buying the 51mm watch specifically because you don't mind something large on your wrist, you might as well get a larger display out of it. Garmin hasn't abandoned its traditional MIP users either. Alongside the AMOLED versions, Fenix 9 Pro is still available with solar and MIP display options, and I think that's important because there are basically two very different types of premium Garmin buyer now. One wants the bright, high-resolution AMOLED display, and something that feels more like a premium modern smartwatch. The other cares about battery life above almost everything else. And if you're in that second group, Garmin has some pretty wild numbers for you. The largest standard Fenix 9 can reach up to 29 days in smartwatch mode, while the 51mm Fenix 9 Pro AMOLED can stretch that to around 31 days. Move over to the largest solar configuration under Garmin's specified solar use conditions, however, and we're talking about up to 57 days. 57 days. Obviously, that's a best-case manufacturer figure rather than what every person will get in everyday use. GPS usage, notifications, sensors, display settings, and how much sunlight the watch receives will all affect the real number. But even if your actual result is substantially below that figure, we're still talking about battery endurance that makes conventional smartwatches feel like completely different products. And that's one reason Fenix continues to have such a dedicated audience. If you're hiking for days, doing an ultra, traveling somewhere remote, or simply hate charging another device every night. Battery life isn't just a specification, it changes how you use the watch. But I think Garmin's mapping upgrades may actually matter more to serious Fenix users. Fenix 9 gets 50% more RAM than Fenix 8, and Garmin has updated the mapping engine as well. According to Garmin, map panning can now be up to 30% faster. That sounds like one of those upgrades that won't look impressive on a comparison chart, but it could make the watch noticeably better every time you navigate with it. Anyone who has used detailed maps on a small wearable knows that responsiveness matters. You zoom in, pan around, check the trail ahead, move back out, and the whole experience can become frustrating if the hardware can't keep up. Garmin has also introduced a new perspective map view designed to show more information around your immediate position while giving you a clearer picture of what's ahead. Again, that's exactly the kind of improvement I want to see on a Fenix. Not another random smartwatch gimmick. Make the outdoor features faster and easier to use. Storage has doubled as well, with 64 gigabytes now available. That gives you considerably more room for maps, music, and other content, with Garmin saying you can store around 7,000 songs. But perhaps the biggest reason to choose the Fenix 9 Pro isn't the display, titanium, or storage, it's inReach. Garmin is now offering inReach connectivity across all three Fenix 9 Pro sizes, including the 43mm model. And I think that's one of the most meaningful changes of this generation. Previously, if you wanted Garmin's more advanced satellite connectivity on the Fenix 8 Pro generation, you were pushed toward a larger watch. Now someone with a smaller wrist can choose a 43mm Fenix 9 Pro and still get access to inReach functionality. With an active inReach plan, the watch can use satellite and LTE connectivity for communication when your phone isn't available, including messaging and interactive SOS functionality. Garmin has expanded that system further with features such as weather forecasts delivered over satellite, Garmin Locate, and live track related functionality through Garmin Messenger. And this is where I think Garmin understands its Fenix customer better than companies trying to turn every wearable into a miniature smartphone. If I'm buying a $1,000 outdoor watch, I don't necessarily need another place to scroll through apps. I want the watch to potentially help me when I'm somewhere my phone can't. And satellite communication is one of the few smartwatch upgrades that can genuinely change what you're comfortable doing outdoors. There are some smaller changes as well. The built-in flashlight now includes a green light mode intended to preserve night vision. Garmin has also expanded its training and endurance features with new stamina zones and stamina curve tools. The idea is to give you a better understanding of your available endurance and how you're using it during longer activities, based partly on your fitness and training history. Rucking also gets more attention. You can adjust pack weight during an activity, use Goruck workouts directly on the watch, and track training with load as part of the activity. Indoor rowing gets additional metrics as well, including VO2 max and power curve information. And then there's a feature called Garmin Epic, which I think is actually a pretty clever addition. Normally, if you go on a 7-day hiking trip, Garmin Connect treats each day's recorded activity as its own thing. Epic allows you to combine multiple activities recorded over days, weeks, or even months into one larger story. You can bring the activities together, look at your performance and health data across the entire period, add photos, and then share the complete experience. For a normal 5K run, you probably won't care. But imagine a week-long cycling trip across another country, a major hiking expedition, or months of training leading into an event. Instead of having dozens of disconnected entries, you can turn the entire experience into one continuous record. That's a feature that actually fits the kind of people Garmin is targeting with Fenix. Now, there's one area where the rumors were perhaps more exciting than reality. There had been plenty of speculation about a completely new Elevate Gen 6 sensor and potentially major new health capabilities. But Fenix 9 isn't really a health sensor revolution. And that brings us to what I think is the most important question about this entire launch. Who should actually upgrade? If you own a Fenix 6 or even an older Garmin, Fenix 9 is a massive jump. You're getting Garmin's latest mapping experience, newer training tools, much more modern displays, huge battery life, more storage, and depending on the model, satellite connectivity. If you're coming from Fenix 7, I think it becomes more complicated, but there's still enough here to make an upgrade appealing, particularly if you've been waiting for a mold, better navigation, or inReach functionality. But if you're already wearing a Fenix 8, I wouldn't rush. And that's not because Fenix 9 is disappointing, it's because Fenix 8 was already extremely good. Fenix 9 doesn't suddenly make your existing watch bad. You're not getting some revolutionary new health sensor, completely redesigned interface, or capability that transforms what a Fenix can do. The 51mm display is better, maps are faster, storage is doubled, battery life has improved, and the Pro models get much broader satellite connectivity. Those are meaningful improvements. But for most Fenix 8 owners, they're probably not $1,000 improvements. And that's why I think Fenix 9 makes much more sense when viewed as Garmin's new flagship for people entering the ecosystem or upgrading after several generations, rather than something designed to make every Fenix 8 owner immediately replace their watch. There's also a clear reason to consider Pro this time. The regular Fenix 9 gives you the core experience starting at $999.99. But if you're already spending that kind of money and you're genuinely using the watch for outdoor adventures, the Fenix 9 Pro's premium construction and connectivity could make that extra expense easier to justify, especially because inReach is now available without forcing you into the biggest watch. So overall, Garmin hasn't reinvented the Fenix with Generation 9. Instead, it has refined almost every part of what the Fenix is supposed to do well. The display is brighter and larger on the biggest model, maps are faster, there's more memory and twice the storage, battery endurance remains ridiculous, satellite connectivity is more accessible, training features continue to expand, and Pro finally feels like a more clearly differentiated premium tier. The standard Fenix 9 starts at $999, while Fenix 9 Pro starts at $1,099, with pricing increasing depending on size and configuration. So now that the leaks are over and Fenix 9 is actually here, I think there's only one question worth asking. Did Garmin do enough? If you're using a Fenix 6 or Fenix 7, does this finally look like the generation worth upgrading to? And if you're already wearing a Fenix 8, is there anything here that would make you spend another $1,000? Let me know in the comments, because I have a feeling the answer is going to be very different depending on which Fenix is currently on your wrist.